The only time I'll ever like recognize someone before they recognize me, if they like engage, is if they're right in front of me. My name is Morgan Cook-Sather, and I'm a sophomore. So I have a rare genetic eye condition, which is a form of juvenile macular degeneration, which means that progressively over time, my vision has gotten worse, starting when I was diagnosed when I was 9. And the way this manifests the most is that it means I'm legally blind, so navigating different spaces and facial recognition is something that's really hard. Reading small print is impossible, and seeing like far distances is also something I am unable to do. I think it's really important to remember that vision is a spectrum, and it's not just 20/20 or completely blind. From personal experience, being someone who's in between that and who's legally blind and can see some things but not other things, I think for people who don't interact with someone who has a visual impairment can be confused sometimes because I seem capable of some things, but then other things I'm not. And so just remembering that it's an individual experience, and it's not just fully blind or can see everything. I would say navigating campus is probably it's pretty challenging. I guess you can imagine that, let's say you're walking around campus and you don't recognize anybody's faces. Like, you look across and it's just blurry. Even someone who's as far as I am from you right now, like, you can't recognize their face. So I imagine that when you walk around campus, you're like, across Sunken Garden, oh, there's my friend, or something like that. That never happens for me because I can't facially identify who's there. So that's just an interesting, different experience, I feel like, because I think I can hear, like, around me someone being like, oh, hey, like, and I feel like that's a very big part of what Mary's campus is, that community and running into your friends and from across the way or from closer. So that's one thing. I would say stairs are definitely something also that's really challenging. For going to my classes, I find routes that don't make me have to take exterior stairs, because poor contrast between stairs is something that's really challenging for me, because there's no easy way to see the edges of them. So for example, like the brick stairs in Sunken Garden, I don't use those. I will walk around. Kind of just created my own route that may not necessarily be the fastest route around campus, but is one that doesn't stress me out as much. I'll try to use good language that conveys the experience. This will be good practice. So if I go into a classroom, let's say ISC 1221, I feel like people know that one, that huge lecture hall, it doesn't matter what seat I sit in the classroom, whether it's the first row or the back row, I can't see what's projected onto the screen. That's kind of just a normal experience for me, even in like smaller classrooms, like let's say Washington. If someone writes on the blackboard or whiteboard, I can't read what they're writing. I think that's probably the biggest thing. So one of the things I have my formal letter of accommodations, but I also like to reach out to my professors before the semester starts and tell them specifically how my condition will manifest in their particular class, because I feel like accommodations are words on paper, but there's little nuances that don't go into the accommodations that are also important in the classroom. For example, so with my eye condition, I rely on the peripheral vision because the central vision is pretty much gone. So I can't make eye contact. So I know in classes it's typical that if a teacher calls on you, they kind of just look at you and then you're like, oh, they called on me, and that's when you start talking. But for me, you'll be looking for a while at me because I won't know that you're looking at me. So I ask, hey, just want to let you know this is the way this manifests in the classroom. If you could call on me by name, if I have my hand raised, then that's the way that I'll know that you're calling on me. Just merely looking at me won't work for me. Or just understanding that I can't read the board, so I ask if they're writing stuff out to also verbally say it, because I'm able to keep a lot in my brain. If I'm taking notes and they're actively talking, I can play through the sentences that they're saying in my head as I'm jotting them down, but that's only if it's auditory. If it's visual, I can't see it. So just little stuff like that I like to also bring to my professor's attention. But something that really struck me last spring with one of my professors is we had a lot of readings. It was a Call 150, and one of the readings wasn't accessible in any kind of digital format. And so she recorded herself reading each chapter of the book for me. And I was just like so grateful for that, because no one asked her to do that. No one. But she knew that it needed to be in a digital format for me, and there wasn't any other way. And so she took the time. And then one time I had another professor who I talked through all about all our accommodations, and we were like, this looks good. We made a plan for this semester. And then one time she was behind my computer and saw exactly what I had to do to zoom in and to read the materials in her class. And she was like, this is what you have to do? I was like, yeah. She was like, no, you're doing way too much. Like, we have to find a different way, because after seeing it for herself with her own eyes, she realized how hard it was and what I was doing. That's why I think it's important that people actually see, because I can describe stuff all day, but if you don't see it with your own eyes, sometimes you just can't really understand it. So that was an instance where she saw it and she was like, wow, and we made a change, and yeah.